Dubstep. Okay, so dubstep is like one of my. It's like not even one of my favorite. It's like the favorite genre of music to me. Let me just adjust this here. There is one of it. I keep saying one of. It is my single favorite genre of music. It is so good. If you don't know what it is, I'm about to get you. I'm about to give you just an entire like the complete history of dubstep as a genre. Okay, so here's a skinny. Early 2000s. I believe it's 2002. Actually, no. Let's go before that. Disco. Disco kind of died out in like the mid to late 80s, 90s. Replaced with house music, and house music is predominantly like it's like the popular thing for like clubbing, raving, etc. That was kind of the birth of rave culture in the 90s. Is like house music, some Eurodance, I guess. I don't know, but like here's the thing: house music is very repetitive, and so like a bunch of DJs in the UK in like the early 2000s, they decided essentially, hey, why don't we make something new? And so what they did is they took like essentially like house and they put it to like a kick on first, snare on third instead of house's four to the floor. Um, and that essentially became UK two step. Now UK two step is very like very low key, very like it's still like raveable, but at the same time it's very low key. Um, but some other DJs and producers decided, hey, we want to make this like wonkier or weirder or whatever. And so what they did is they combined it with reggae dub from I believe Jamaica. I could be wrong. Um, I'm trying to think because this is a bunch of stuff that I did a bunch of deep dives into this. And I'm not sure because there's a lot of controversy. People like argue back and forth about how dubstep actually started, but this is the theory that I have put together based on the research that I've done. Basically, they took dub, right, and they combined it with two step to make dubstep. And initially, dubstep originally was very like calm, quiet, like very low key. Not like quiet, but it was again raveable. You could move to it, but it was still very low key. It was a really interesting sound though, and because of this, several American DJs, predominantly Skrillex, decided to take this genre in the UK and move it over to the US with this sort of Americanized style, and it was very like loud and like very flamboyant and distorted and just really like stompy. It was really stompy. Uh, and that kind of dubstep was dubbed, no pun intended. Well, actually, yes, it is intended. That subgenre of dubstep was dubbed bro step. Now, bro step is like what everyone thinks of when they hear dubstep. Back in the 2010s, this music kind of went viral. So like think Skrillex first of the year, Bangarang. Well, Bangarang was more drum step, but I'll get into that later. Like first of the year, I guess Bangarang kind of counts as bro step because it's in that bro step style. It was the bass style and like the whole like sound design style of that time. And that was like the whole thing. It was bro step. It was dubstep, bro step, whatever you call it. That was it. Um, and a bunch of other artists hopped on this trend. You see early Virtual Riot, uh, Barely Alive. Like back in the day, those guys were like stomping, dude. They had the stompy. They had the stompy. Yes. Um, and nowadays, a lot of those artists still incorporate that kind of stompy style into the modern era of dubstep, and I'll get into that later. Um, but and some stuff went down like rave culture. One of the like I think dubstep has grown into like one of the biggest pieces of rave culture, just kind of out of nowhere. I mean, rave culture is also about as old as dubstep. Dubstep was one of the original like rave genres. Um, up there with house music. House is definitely older, but dubstep kind of followed after. Um, but like if you're not familiar with rave culture, it's a whole other world. There's Plur, there's Candy, there's like the whole it's a whole different world. It's a whole culture of its own. Um, and a big part of that culture is centered around like substances and like the general like party like vibes. Me personally, and this is just kind of an opinion, just me personally as a Christian, I'm not super into that. I don't really partake, if you will. But I personally I can't personally recommend it, but people do it. It's a thing. It's a whole thing. Um, and there've been some like yeah, I don't know. My train of thought just died. Um, but yeah, no, rave culture, like dubstep is now like a really integral part of rave culture, and it's like a whole thing. Now, I personally, when I go to like a show, when I go to a rave, I'm not in it for the culture. Like the culture's like the people are nice, but that's not why I'm there. I'm there for the sound. I'm there for the rip roaring ride that is that incredible, just delectable, scrum diddlyumptious sound design, dude. Because I'm such a humongous nerd for sound design. I love sound design. I love taking the sound that's just a buzz, just that, and then turning into like just this guttural, like roaring thing. I love like the way the sounds make my brain like really really crunchy. I don't know if it's like it's a thing or if it's like an autism thing. I don't know, but yeah, dubstep is really really cool. Um, but as cool as that genre was in like the 2010s, so like I think it first came to the U.S. in like 2007 2008. That was like when it started like very first gaining traction. Um, but I believe it was from like 2017 to 2019, the genre had a bit of a decline. Um, Primarily due to just again, it got repetitive. The same way house got repetitive, so they made dubstep. Dubstep got repetitive, so they made rhythm. Which honestly, if you know what rhythm is, seems kind of counterintuitive to make rhythm when dubstep gets too repetitive. Because rhythm in and of itself is very repetitive. If you don't know what rhythm is, it's essentially just think dubstep, but turn it from like a 10, like the intensity notch from a 10 to like an 8. And it's essentially just basically just metallic rubbery quarter notes with a kick and a clap as a snare. And it's a good sound. It's very very good sound. I am a rhythm kid. I will high knee to like some like Beast Boy or some like Chibs or something. But yeah, no, rhythm is really cool. It see, I can't really pinpoint the origins of rhythm because here's my thing. I used to think that rhythm started in like 2016, 2017. I did a deep dive and it was like, uh what's his name? Getter or something like that. He like kind of started the whole rhythm thing with Trench Lords, like that unreleased EP that eventually became Trench, the alternate name for Rhythm. So if you don't know what Rhythm is, you probably know what Trench is, and if you don't know what either of them are, that's probably why you're watching this video. But like, oop, anyways, um, yeah, Trench became a thing. Um, but here's the thing, and I said it before, I'll say it again. I can't really pinpoint the origins of that because I used to think it started in like 2017, and then I like listened to like some old Blank Space music, and that stuff is rhythm, and it's from like I don't know, like 2015, 2016. So it could supersede that. It might just be a genre old as time, maybe. Who knows? Might have been rhythm being made at the same time as like the first analog synthesizer, but I have no clue, dude. Um, But anyways, yeah, so rhythm was a thing. It started gaining traction though in like 2018 2018, 2019 ish. Um, Along with like Disciple Records, they kind of vamped that up a little. Um, and then like yeah, so rhythm became a thing. It became like the new like standard for like cool hip new subgenres. And then it got repetitive because it's rhythm, and if you've listened to rhythm, you know that stuff gets repetitive. Um, so what did they do? They basically just started an entire spectrum of subgenres. We have now freeform bass, which is like the Wook style, like Subtronics excision style. Like a lot of people say that that's rhythm. That's not rhythm. That's called Wook. Okay, that is called Wook or freeform bass. Um, and so like now we just have the spectrum of subgenres that would be bro step, rhythm, which you can combine the two to make Briddim, which is kind of the thing that like is coined by like Wooly, excision to some extent. I know Virtual Riot did some Briddim. Ray Volpe started doing Briddim like a while ago. I know Barely Alive does Briddim. So you have bro step, rhythm, Briddim. You have the old fashioned like dubstep, the original. Um, you have like yeah, you have all this stuff. And then there was this thing that came along that was essentially just future bass and melodic bass. And melodic bass is a little older. Like it dates back to I don't know, like shortly after bro step had its peak. Melodic bass kind of started getting in thrown into the mix where it was like dubstep-ish, but it was like melodic and composed of like super saws and stuff, and it was very cinematic and very soulful and emotional. Think like progressive house of like 2016, 2017, but it's a dubstep track. Like think of that. Like think progressive house with a dubstep beat. Like that's kind of the general vibe that it gave off. And that was really, really good. You have artists like Wooly, Trivecta, um, I'm trying to think. A bunch of artists really kind of hopped on that trend. Ilenium was a guy who not pirated, pioneered. He pioneered that trend of melodic bass, and that was really, really great. And then like in 2017, 2018, and this genre kind of started before then, but future bass started getting traction around that time. And future bass is essentially just like low key melodic bass, where instead of like very vast sounding like cinematic drums, it's essentially just like it's got those super saw chords. It's very melodic, but it's got like a rhythm to it, a flow almost. Think of it as like freeform. It's like freeform style flow, but in melodic bass sound design. It was very nice. It was very enjoyable. I used to be like such a big fan of future bass, and then I got into rhythm, and then this thing came along called color bass. Now, color bass is not per like it's kind of more of a category than like a genre where it's like there's some dubstep color bass and there's some other genres that can be color bass, but dubstep color bass specifically is what I'm covering in this video in the moment, and it's essentially um it's like basically just any genre of dubstep. Predominantly rhythm is my favorite. Like rhythm, like color based rhythm, also known as like melodic rhythm and future rhythm, but I'll get into that later. That's a whole other thing. Um, but like melodic rhythm is really good. But just like color based dubstep, essentially what you do is you take any genre of dubstep and you just put a vocoder over everything. Vocoder. Now you have resonator, chroma. I don't know if convolution reverb counts. I don't think that's a color based. Well, is that? I don't know. I'm trying to think. Pitch map. That's another really, really great way to make color base. But essentially, yeah, like all that is like it's a whole vibe. It's very, very cool, and basically you just put all those things over like a regular dubstep drop, and now it's this like really rough, punchy sound, but it's melodic. It's tonal. Like it may not have like a chord progression or melody like future rhythm, but it's still very, very tonal, and it's really, really impressive to listen to. It's very, very cool. There's some stuff that's got a good groove, and then there's some stuff that I don't know if I really vibe with. just because the flow just came. I'm very picky about my flow and my sound design. Like very, 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 very picky. You will not believe it. Anyways, besides the point, color base is a thing. It's really, really cool. Like the sound design is just absolutely sick, and you can make some color base like without needing those kinds of like color based plugins like vocoders, pitch map, etc. You could like I know Chime makes that stuff without it. Like in Vital, he basically can just make a tonalized chord thing like just in Vital without needing stuff like that. But he still uses some of that stuff sometimes. Um, from what I know. And then we have Tear Out. Tear Out is traumatizing. It is literally trauma in music form. Essentially, this is rhythm on crack and steroids. Like just imagine it's and not all of it is rhythm based. Like some of it, like rhythm is very like quarter notes. So just Tear Out can be like and like it's a very like very cacophonous, loud, distorted sound that can have that like very like quick syncopated like sound, but some tear out does have like some ties to rhythm in its flow, and that's the kind of tear out that I really really like. I like anything that just has that kind of rhythm flow. One of the key, and I'll probably talk about this in another video in more detail, but one of like the key things of rhythm is it has to be like really bouncy sounding, and there's some tear out that has some bounce to it that is just it's so good. But yeah, no, Tear Out is like really loud and cacophonous and distorted. It's meant to be like it's like the thrash metal of dubstep. It's really really good. It's very very cool. I think one of my favorite Tear Out songs right now is like Splint by was it Lidos and Control Freak? Was it? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at it. Um, and then we have Future Rhythm, which is like one of my favorite genres of dubstep. Um, and this is all these genres that I'm covering right now. These all kind of range from like 2017, 2018 to like the present. And this is the kind of stuff that people predominantly produce nowadays. But Future Rhythm is by far like one of I think my single favorite uh subgenre of dubstep, where it's rhythm, but it's tonalized in the same way color bass is, but with a chord progression, like a very nice, like clean, coherent chord progression. It's very, very impressive and it's very, very fun. But it has just a nice bounce while also like per, like maintaining like just a really soulful melody. It's really, really cool. It can be really like cinematic, or it can be like just really fun and bouncy and just kind of energetic melody. But Future Rhythm is just absolutely great. And now what we're seeing, and we've gone through the entire timeline history of dubstep. Now what we're seeing right now is the sort of new wave of subgenre known as microdrops, and this is one of is pioneered by quite a few different artists. But one of the ones that I've been noticing that kind of coined the term microdrops, I believe, is Chime. Chime kind of coined this term and kind of made this like a thing. Like he kind of called out other artists for making like kind of engineering these microdrops into existence, and then he kind of turned that whole thing into like an actual trend where it's before it was like a thing that no one really realized was a trend. They just kind of did it, and then he started this whole thing where it's like, oh, I dropped like a 2 track EP or whatever on Disciple and like Phosphor and Micrology and like just making the drops sound as tiny as possible. And that's like the entire point of that specific subgenre is that basically you just make the sound as like tiny as like you possibly can. And it's a ton of fun. It's very like sprinkly, sparkly, like it's the vibes. It's the vibes. It's really, 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 really good. Um and yeah. There's a bunch of other like subgenres like out there, and I'll probably cover those in a later video. Actually, I think I'm gonna do a tier list next if y'all are interested in that. But yeah, that's like my complete timeline history of dubstep. Uh, Let me know what you think of this video. I don't really do long form content. I haven't in a very long time. Actually, I haven't like ever. But I'm trying to get my YouTube channel like active, boosting. A lot of the inspiration for me to do long form content on this platform Actually, I owe a lot of that credit to Ethan on Everything. That's like one of my new favorite content creators. I've been binging a lot of his stuff, and he's really, really good. And I was just like, I wonder if I did that, but for dubstep, um, among other topics, which are probably going to be like more just general nerd rants. But anyways, yeah, no, complete timeline of dubstep. There it is. Uh, Let me know if you want to see more of this kind of content. Also, check out my Instagram, my TikTok, uh, and my SoundCloud. I'm trying to get to 100 followers on SoundCloud for Winter Arc. Um, yeah, there you go. End of video.